Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how different automakers are currently faring in today's market, because it's pretty interesting, the success stories and what we will call the not so success stories. Before we get in this video though, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. So the report that I'm going to be going over comes from goodcarbadcar.net. They basically just track the sales figures with the different manufacturers, and some of the numbers that are currently up right now I think are absolutely fascinating, and so I just want to dive into the trends. So I'm not going to be going over every single manufacturer. I'm going to be going over the ones that I think are the most important for the overall car market, or I just think are frankly interesting for today's video. So the first automaker that I think is really important is actually Acura. So their year-to-date sales are up by over 18% compared to last year. So last year at the same time, they sold just over 28,000 units, whereas now they're at just over 33,000 units, almost 34,000 units now. And a big part of the reason why I think Acura is doing really well right now is because they actually have cars like to sell, right? Because over the last couple of years, Acura just didn't have any inventory, and so their sales just kept going down because of lack of inventory. Now that there's inventory available, sales are going up quite a bit. And I guess I'm doing this alphabetically. Now the next one that I find absolutely fascinating is Alfa Romeo. Their sales are down by 27% with their year-to-date number. Last year, they sold 3,200 cars in the same time period, whereas this year, they're only at 2,300 sales. And this month, again, is not a great month for them so far. And so I wonder if this is like the car market here in the US saying that they don't want Alfa Romeo again. And I mean, Fiat, for example, which is also under the Stellantis umbrella, like that brand's gone from the US at this point. I mean, like this year so far, they've sold just over 100 cars. Like that is, that's absolutely nothing when it comes to car sales. And so it'll be interesting to see what the actual future is for Alfa Romeo here in the US market. I mean, they've got some new cars coming out like the Tonale, for example, and so we'll see if those are successful or not. And then I guess in the trend of alphabetical stuff, two more manufacturers I find very important, Audi and BMW. Both these manufacturers are up. Audi's up by a very substantial margin, 48% this year. BMW's up by 11%, and this just shows the growth of the luxury car market that we have seen, right? Luxury car sales still encompass a much larger share of the overall car market compared to what we see in a normal market. And BMW and Audi's increase in sales figures definitely shows that. Now, this one is very interesting. Buick, they're up by 99%. And I honestly don't understand this one whatsoever, because like Buick is such a confusing brand to me, because like it's kind of nicer than a Chevy, but not quite as nice as a GMC. But then they kind of market more of like a luxury type brand similar to Cadillac. But it's just, it's a very interesting brand. But regardless, their sales are up by a massive amount. So they're doing something right. I don't know what it is. Let me know what you think on that one in the comment section below. And I guess speaking of General Motors brands, pretty much every single General Motors brand is up like by a large margin. So like Cadillac, for example, they're up by 28%. Chevy up by 15%. See where GMC is. They're up by 7%. And so General Motors is just killing it right now. My personal opinion on why I think that General Motors is doing so well right now is because they actually have a really good product lineup right now. They've got a lot of new product. And on top of having a lot of new product, they're not trying to charge an insane amount of money for it. Now, yes, their cars are more expensive today than they were in the past, but like a really good example is with their HD trucks. You can get a fully loaded GMC Sierra Denali Ultimate for less than $100,000. I know it's still very expensive, and I'm talking about the diesel heavy-duty truck. Whereas with Ford and Ram's fully loaded diesel trucks that compete against the Denali Ultimate, those are both like $110,000+. And so GM seems to be undercutting, their American competition. So that's interesting there. Now, the next couple of things that are interesting is Chrysler and Dodge. Those brands are also up. Chrysler 9%, Dodge almost 25%. I think the reason why Dodge is up by so much is because of all the last call editions. Everyone's trying to get all the Challengers and Chargers and Hellcat Durangos and all that kind of stuff before they're gone. And so that kind of makes sense there. Ford is up by 11%. Genesis, they're up by like 16%. Genesis, by the way, is like becoming very large when it comes to being a luxury brand. So their year-to-date number so far, 13,000 units. Again, remember at the beginning of the report, Acura, 33,000 units. So like Genesis isn't as big as a brand like Acura in terms of their sales figures here in the US market, but like I wouldn't be surprised if Genesis ends up selling, as many cars as, a luxury manufacturer like Acura sells here in the US market here in the near future. And then Honda, they're up by 5%. Again, I think that's just a production thing, because Hondas, they seem like they sell pretty well. This is a huge success story. Hyundai, they're up by over 21% for their year-to-date number. And I think that the reason why Hyundai is doing so well right now is affordability, right? I think that's a big thing. And I think that Hyundai is really reshaping that segment of the market because, again, they kind of compete against Toyota and Honda. And what Hyundai is offering is really like well-equipped cars at a very reasonable price point with a really good warranty. And so it's like, even if you don't trust Hyundai's reliability, it's like they've got a 10-year warranty on the car. So, and people are definitely taking note and they're buying them. This one is fascinating to me. Infiniti, I've thought for a long time that Infiniti has been on their way out from the US market because that's just a brand that struggles, but their sales are up by 40% with their year-to-date number, 15,000 units. And so you can see that Genesis is about to pass up Infiniti when it comes to volume. But yeah, it's interesting that Infiniti is still doing so well. Now, the next two brands that are not doing so well, Jaguar and Jeep. Jaguar is down by about 8%, Jeep's down by about 20%. Now, when it comes to Jaguar, I think that the reason why they're selling fewer cars is because they're trying to like basically pivot with that particular brand. Like they're trying to go for more expensive type vehicles. And I think the other big part of it, honestly, is that manufacturer, right? Jaguars with Land Rover, they're still struggling a lot with supply constraints. And so I think a lot of the excess materials that they have to build cars, they're using to build Land Rovers because those are the vehicles that are selling. The Jaguars, they don't really sell as well as the Land Rovers. So I think that kind of plays into that. And, when it comes to Jeep, I've made some videos about the Jeep situation, but, I will say I am kind of confused as to why they're not recovering right now because, again, if you haven't seen the videos on the main channel, basically, Jeep right now, as rated by not me, but third-party sources like JD Power and everything, they rate Jeep as like one of the most unreliable brands that you can buy here in the U.S. market, so that definitely makes them take a hit. And then on top of that, their prices, they've gone up quite a bit, but Jeep has the biggest discounts like right now. I mean, you can get like $10,000 off the MSRP price of like a Grand Cherokee all day long. Gladiators, Wranglers don't have as big of a discount, but I think it's surprising. I think that, and this is just kind of my opinion on the situation. I think that what Jeep needs to do to actually like remedy this is lower their MSRP prices. I know that might sound crazy because it's like the money's the same, but I think the problem is people are researching cars and they just look at the MSRP price and they go, wait, a Grand Cherokee is a $60,000, $70,000 vehicle? What? Even though, again, after discounts and rebates and everything, these Grand Cherokees are selling for nowhere near MSRP. I think the MSRPs are really important, especially in today's market. And so, yeah, I think that's the reason why their sales still aren't going up is I think they're now priced where they should be in the market, frankly, with the discounts that they have, because like you can get a very nicely equipped Grand Cherokee, like a $50,000, $5,000 MSRP car for like 45 grand. And when you compare it to the competition, like it's a really good value. But I just don't think enough people know about that right now. Land Rover, we kind of already talked about the Jaguar. They can't build enough cars. And I think that's where the Jaguar sales are declining because the parts are going over the Land Rovers to build those. Lexus, they're up by 6%. So Lexus finally able to build cars. So that's helping out quite a bit. Lincoln, I've noticed kind of a falling out with Lincoln, right? Because Ford's up in sales, Lincoln is down in sales. And I think that part of it is they just need to refresh their lineup. They're doing that with some of their cars for like the 24 model year. They did the Navigator for 22, like a kind of a refresh. It wasn't a huge one, but we'll kind of see what happens to that situation. They're only down by 3%, so it's not a big deal at this point. Mitsubishi down by 20%. Now, I haven't decided if I'm going to make a dedicated video to this yet, but I think the reason why Mitsubishi's sales are down by such a large margin, and this is going to sound really bad, but it's because you can buy Toyotas and Hondas again, and Hyundais and everything. So like all the other manufacturers that were really constrained in this affordable car segment are now able to build cars again. You can find affordable Hondas and Hyundais and Kias and Toyotas. Toyotas are still pretty hard to find, but you guys get the point. And so I think that a lot of people were buying Mitsubishi because they couldn't get the other cars, but now that you can get the other cars, they're kind of not really interested in Mitsubishi anymore. But we'll kind of see what happens long term. But I definitely do think this pullback is going to continue as those other manufacturers increase their production. Nissan, they're up by 15%. I think Nissan's actually going to have like an absolute like amazing year, and next year I think it's going to be really good for them as well, because Nissan is kind of turned into like Toyota at this point. And what I mean by that is, if you take away, Nissan's bottom part of the lineup with all the sedans and everything that have the CVTs, you look at their big vehicles. They've got V8s in their trucks and SUVs, right? Or big naturally aspirated V6s with torque converter automatics. And that's what people want, because that's considered more reliable than like the turbocharged engines that Toyota's doing. And so I think, again, people are taking note on that. And I think they're going Nissan over Toyota. Like, for example, Tundra versus Titan. You've got a lot of people that are buying the Titan instead of the Tundra because reliability concerns with the Tundra's new turbocharged engine. I think with the Ram situation, the reason why they're still down, frankly, is similar to Jeep, where, again, they are discounting their vehicles heavily. Again, when you look at like a Ram truck compared to a Ford or a Chevy, the discounts are so much larger. Like, you can now buy a similarly equipped Ram for substantially less than you could buy a similarly equipped Chevy or Ford or GMC at this point. But again, I just don't think enough people know about it. I think that people are looking at the MSRP prices and they're going, dang, that Ram sticker's for as much as a Ford now. I'd rather just buy the Ford, right? I think that's kind of what's happening. And the reason why I say it that way is Ford did a redesign on their F-150 in 21 and their heavy duty in 23. Chevy did their redesign 22, and then HD is 24 model year, even though it's technically I would call it more of a 23. Ram hasn't really done enough with their truck since like 2019. So Ram actually has the oldest truck on the market. And so I think people are looking at it as, oh, it's the oldest truck in the market, and the MSRP is the same as the other trucks that were recently redesigned. And I think that's what pushes people away at this point. But if people actually saw their dealer discounts, I think they might change. And then this leads us into the last few. So Volvo's sales are up by 16%. I think that's pretty cool. And Volkswagen, their sales are up by 4%. Volkswagen's still kind of constrained. I think that Volkswagen's going to have a much better end of the year, because Volkswagen has a bunch of affordable cars, and that's what people are looking for in today's market. But again, they're just not able to produce them in high enough numbers. Once they're able to get that production up, I think the sales are going to increase quite substantially. Toyota, they're down by 10%. And again, this is purely production. If Toyota was able to produce more cars, they would sell more cars. And so this leads us into Tesla. Now, I'm probably going to need to dive a little bit deeper into the Tesla situation to figure out exactly what's happening, but I think this is really strange. So Tesla's year-to-date sales year over year are up by 4%, which is, I know it sounds like great, but like every other manufacturer pretty much outside of, Jeep and Ram and some of the other ones are like up in the double digits, whereas Tesla 4%. You think that Tesla would have more growth considering the new federal tax credit. But the thing that's most fascinating is this month compared to this month last year, Tesla's sales are down by over 32%. And so I haven't researched enough in the situation to figure out what's happening, but like, I think it's interesting that people are pulling back so much from Tesla. Again, you'd think that Tesla would be having like the best year ever, because again, they lowered their prices at the beginning of the year. You've got the EV tax credit, which makes Teslas even more affordable. So like, EVs on the surface should be way more appealing, especially Tesla's being Tesla, Tesla's like the dominance in the EV market. And so let me know what you guys think about the Tesla situation, but yeah, it's interesting that there's such a huge pullback from purchasing with Tesla. Maybe it's all the negative equity. Maybe everyone that wants to buy a Tesla, they have to trade in a Tesla and they're buried in it, and so they can't. Anyways, let me know which manufacturer situation you find the most interesting, and let me know if you want me to do a deep dive into any of these manufacturers to basically talk a little bit more about what's happening with them. I'll see you.